Welcome in to the Inquirer podcast. It is Jeremy Werner and Derek Piper, and we got some big news today. So we're talking a lot of Illini hoops. First of all, Illinois adds a great talent, and I want to bring up my pronunciation guide that I've created for myself, Derek, just so I get it right. But Kasparas Jakucionis, I'm going with that. We will figure it out. We'll see what Illinois says when he signs. But Kasparis is a big addition for Illinois. Lithuanian guard, had a great tournament over at the Adidas Next Generation tournament. We'll break that down to what he brings to the program. And shout out to Illinois and their talent accrual. They have two players that just made the USA basketball U18 national team that will compete this summer in one of the FIBA events. So we'll talk about that because Perez Johnson and Jeremiah Fears, two of the 12 players on that roster, not bad to have coming into your program. But Derek, let's talk about Jakucionis because that's a big addition. Finally, the wing is here. How big of a deal is this, and what does he bring to the lineup?
I think it's a really big deal. He's highly respected in the international scene and someone that Illinois was able to pivot to when some things broke different ways throughout this offseason. Of course, we started talking to AJ Storr, a little bit of David Jones, Igor Dimin, and then the ability to land on Kasparis is someone that can do a lot of different things with good size, very skilled, ability to shoot the three. Look at in that Spain league, about 38% from beyond the arc, and a high-level scorer at 19 points a game. But his feel for the game is something that really stands out in addition to his ability to score, just the way that he is able to see the floor, manipulate defenses, make reads off of pick and rolls, and just the ability to get where he wants off the dribble. Not a super quick twitch, explosive ball handler, but a guy that just has great feel about him. He's got good size to him, about 6'5", 200. I know that's where he's listed. I think even ESPN, Gavoni, when he broke the news, wrote in a story 6'6", so kind of in that 6'5", 6'6" range. And somebody that just turning 18 this week, and I know we'll have probably a conversation about this, will be a younger roster on the whole for Brad Underwood, especially in comparison to last year where the average age of that 8-man rotation about 22 years old. But, yeah, I mean, just really, really talented and ability to maybe have him for multiple years. I think that's big. And I love the fit with Kylan Boswell, too. I think that two guys that are effective both on and off the ball. You look at Kylan, who's played in his recent years at Arizona, whether it's Courtney Ramey or last year with Caleb Love. He's played with another playmaker, another guy who can be a little bit more ball dominant. Not saying that at times, I'm not saying that Kylan won't be at Illinois, but just guys that you can run offense through multiple guards and not take away from the other, because Kylan's a great off-ball shooter. Kasparis is someone that can really be a good spot-up shooter as well, a connector as a secondary option. And I just like the way the pieces fit. I think this is setting up to be a really, really good offensive team again. We'll see what the defensive side looks like. And admittedly, we'll have to see how the pieces ultimately look when they are on the court together. And yes, Kasparis and Thomas Lavavisic coming from the international ranks, but so we haven't seen them up close as much as some of these other guys like a Perez Johnson, who obviously we're going to talk about. But yeah, the tape is pretty impressive. And I do like that, he's played good competition. He's played against Igor Dimin and Hugo Gonzalez, who are projected lottery picks in 25. He's played with the Lithuanian junior national team. He's played at the Adidas Next Gen. He's played basketball without borders as well at the camp that took place around the NBA All-Star weekend back in February. So really good job to Brad Underwood and company. Special shout out especially to Jeff Alexander, who's continuing to work overseas and has gotten in deep with some of these connections that have been fruitful. So Illinois had a lot to sell, opportunity, NIL, and I think they're really excited about this one.
Yeah, Kasparis turns 18, as you said, on Wednesday. We're recording this on Tuesday, so young, but there is a maturity about his game. I mean, we're just watching highlights and some clips from the Adidas Next Generation tournament here, but physically, he's a legit 200 plus pounds. He's got something to work with. Like Fletch, when he gets here, obviously there's things I want to work on, but there's an NBA frame there. There's positional size here. And of course that skill, that basketball IQ, all the things Brad Underwood wants, those things are in this package. And as you said, Derek, he's competed at a high level. Now there's always going to be a transition to America, first of all. And then of course, we always say that, but basketball, I think, kind of breaks down some of those things a little bit more. These guys all kind of talk the same language of basketball. It's made kind of a global game. So there's things they can kind of, connect on there. But the other part is the Big Ten is really good. Again, that is still a step up in competition, both for him and Tom Slavovicic. But I just like the maturity of his game. It feels like we talk about this a lot with some of these European players, but the skill, like they've been taught a certain way that I think goes exactly with what Brad Underwood wants, especially on the offensive end. We'll get into how we would kind of grade this offseason, Derek, with all of this, but I love just the offensive potential of this group. And I feel like this was kind of the missing piece, is that primary playmaker to put next to Kylan Boswell. You got two guys who can kind of do this and create offense. They needed another wing initiator, and this guy certainly fits the bill. And my expectations are for him to be one of those primary playmakers on the team.
Yeah, I know that Illinois views him that as well. They do feel like he is just a point guard with size for the most part. That's how he's played so far. Again, we're going to see an offense that's going to use both him and Kylan in actions and pushing the ball in transition. And I like the multi-positional playmaking. That was something that was big last year of having different guys that could initiate offense, could play in matchups. And Ben Hamrickhouse is definitely somebody that they like as a mid-post guy, as a guy that can play in a little bit of ball screen or just handle the ball on the perimeter and make some passes. We know Avicic can step out and shoot it. And I think that, of course, booty ball is still something I think is going to continue on with Illinois basketball. When you look at Trey White coming in as somebody that's really good in the mid-post, and he's physical. Ty Rodgers, of course, being able to build on what he did last year and see if he can maybe tap in a little bit more to what he has potentially offensively of using his physicality and finishing around the rim. And even Kasparis potentially, 6'5", 200 plus, like you said, get with Fletch. Like, there will probably be some matchups against smaller guards that he will, if not just being able to come off a ball screen and kind of put him on his hip and use that size, but maybe just backing down. So, but yeah, you see the fluidity to his game off the dribble, the way he just is able to anticipate where to go with the ball. You see some of the cutting, as we just saw in those last clips too. So I think, yeah, and internationally there is a lot of emphasis on skill, emphasis on a lot of spacing. And I think that just from a standpoint of offensively, yeah, really exciting about the skill across the roster, the three-point shooting. We're not even mentioning, Kerry Booth's going to come in, and I know he didn't shoot it great at Notre Dame, but he's a guy that can space the floor and step out and be a stretch four. So they really continue to think about what worked for them last year, and just in general, three-point shooting, skill, multi-positional ball handling, and ability to make guys better. And they definitely see that in Kasparas. So they're super excited.
So if we look at the backcourt, right? It's Kylan Boswell, it's Kasparas Jakucionis, and Dre Gibbs Lawhorn, and maybe some Ty Rodgers minutes mixed in there. Is that how you kind of see it?
For sure. Yeah. DGL is going to get a chance to really prove himself another year, a guy that's plenty talented in his own right, athleticism and whatnot. But yeah, I think that as I look at it right now, I do think that Kylan, of course, your starting point guard, so to speak. I think that KJ comes in and has an ability to be, it's almost like playing 2 point guards together. Again, they look at him like he's a 6'5", bordering on 6'6" point guard type. So I would see him, those two kind of as the primary duo in the backcourt. I'd say the DGL can't challenge and see where he stands in that mix as competition goes through the summer into the fall as well. And then you build it on the wing, of course, Trey White, I think, Ty Rodgers, of course, competing for some minutes kind of at that 3-hole, and then Hamrickhouse 4, and then Avicic and Merez at the 5. So I really like the way that it pieces together.
Yeah, Kerry Booth in that front court too.
Yeah,
a lot of pieces there.
Yeah, no doubt. So yeah, I think in that backcourt especially is the idea that those three being able to rotate in. We'll see if DGL can add a little bit more just in terms of maybe poise on the ball and ability to handle it and see how that goes. I think at the very least he's somebody that could push the ball and transition and attack the rim, of course. And he's been a shot maker throughout his career, his prior stops leading up to college. We'll see if he can do that more efficiently this season. But I'm definitely not writing him off as a guy that can click this year too.
And I would say about the two of 11 on this roster that return from last year, Ty Rodgers and Dre Gibbs-Allhorn. Defensively, I got questions about a lot of pieces, maybe besides Colin Boswell, that they have added to the roster. So if they add a lot of defensive value, speaking of that, what do you think Kasparas Jakucionis brings to the defensive end? Because he doesn't seem like he's a complete negative on that end.
Yeah, I'll be interested in watching some more tape to see what you can gather from that. But yeah, I mean, 6'5", the size, I think it helps that he's not coming in as a stick because you look at the Big Ten and know that you can get kind of punked by some bigger guards or more physical wings. You can switch onto those guys that want to get into the paint and kind of bully up the younger guys in the league. So I like that he's got a base as far as strength goes. He's not a bad athlete at all. I think that he can move his feet and be able to not be someone that's just an automatic blow by type of situation. But yeah, I mean, he'll really get tested, obviously, when he gets on campus and you get into the summer workouts and going at guys like Kylan and going at DGL. But it's not like to circle back. It's not like he's faced bad comp so far. I mean, he's faced a guy like Igor. He's faced a guy like Hugo Gonzalez, guys that have been projected highly as far as draft picks as early as the next draft next summer. So again, it'll be something that I'll have to learn a little bit more about, but I'm with you. I think that Kylan can be a real impactful on-ball defender in the backcourt. They really like that about him. Trey White has the ability from a physical standpoint to be a good defender. Didn't defend a whole lot at Louisville. I don't know that anybody did on that team. So, and then Avicic at least provides more rim protection. I'm not saying I don't think he's going to be an eraser back there, but in terms of in comparison to what Illinois had last year, he's got a little bit more legit size and the ability to wall up a little bit better than Coleman did, playing kind of out of position at the 5 last year.
All right, Derek. I'm thinking of what this means for Illinois recruiting Europe. I mean, they've kind of gradually grown their presence there. And kudos to Jeff Alexander. I know Antigua has some connections. Obviously, Brad Underwood has played a role, especially in closing on some of these guys. But these are two highly regarded players that should make an immediate impact. And Tomislav Avicic and Kasparas Jakucionis. Like, what do you think this means for the way they're building a roster and just what it could mean for future recruiting of Europe?
Yeah, I think that number one, it opens up just the pool of talent you can tap into, more options to be able really be able to fully maximize what's out there. Because as we've talked about on a number of podcasts, just there's a lot. You look at the NBA, like you always say, the world is it's easier to access now, and there's more of a established bridge to guys want to play in the NBA. They see Luka, they see Giannis, they see Jokic. So guys that are. Yeah, I mean, those guys that are overseas want to come over and ultimately end up in that league because they see guys that are from where they're from and those type of things. So, and then obviously you've got NIL, which is a big thing in terms of being competitive against some of those pro leagues, those teams that want to keep these guys and hold on to them as long as they can before they maybe try their hand at the NBA. Now the colleges are able to go over there and really make a big swing, a big push to be able to get those guys. So I think with Jeff, what he's done through the years, I mean, Nicola Moretti ultimately didn't click here at Illinois and produce in terms of a long-term impact. I mean, we could have saw what that would have looked like. Zachary Perrine always joked that he was here for 5 minutes, but that was a nice get. He was talented. That they were competing with like UCLA in that one. And usually when a guy like, Jonathan Gavoni breaks your recruitment, that means that you're pretty well regarded internationally. It's not just some pluck of a roll of the dice over there. They're thought to be pretty talented. So
yeah, can I take a moment? Yes, we're basing this all off of Jonathan Gavoni's report, which he's pretty good at this thing, ESPN and connected. So he's the one that's reported this commitment. I would imagine Illinois will make this official very shortly, but continue there.
Yes. We've heard that it's going to happen. So, but yeah, I think too, that's important and why I give Jeff a lot of credit. Obviously you got to do the legwork. You got to make the trips over there and you got to be able to establish relationships kind of in some instances, a little bit on a faster track. I think that was the case with KJ, of course, with Antigua. He had the Avicic family in terms of familiarity, having recruited Big Z and then all of that. So that they can be different in terms of the kind of the runway of how long you have to build that. But getting in the right circles. I think it comes to agents, it comes to people in the basketball world over there, FIBA, pro leagues, to try to know a lot of different people that plug you in the right places sometimes. And you got to be trusted. I mean, you can come to the table with a lot of NIL offer and talk about opportunity and everything. They got to trust you to be able to come overseas and number one, be able to deliver on the money you might be talking about. And number two, to be able to feel like they can, you can get the most out of them. You maybe have a track record, those type of things. And if you kind of get a tip of approval by the right people, that can really plug you in and make it work out. So a lot of teams, more and more teams are trying to dive and dabble over there here recently. I know, obviously, we know the ones that have done so successfully through the years: Arizona, Gonzaga, even Michigan, if you look at the Wagners and whatnot. But Illinois, I think as you go forward, this could be, especially if you have success stories, if Visic really clicks, if Kasparis is a guy that plays at Illinois for a year or two, goes to the NBA, that allows you to go back into those circles and be able to sell the same thing.
Yeah, I was just thinking of some comps of teams that have recently gone overseas, and UCLA had like 4 or 5 of these guys last year. Some of them made an impact, some of them didn't. What are your expectations for Kasparis in his first year at Illinois?
Yeah, I will say the UCLA example does. It kind of makes you tap the brakes a little bit, or make you just think that, hey, it's not as easy as coming over. And look, I mean, even if this was, because you're comparing him to what would be like a true freshman, there are true freshmen that come in and some just click right off the bat, but that list is pretty small in terms of just full-fledged, hit the ground running, all league type of player. I wouldn't put those type of expectations on him, but I do think that he's one of the better guard playmakers coming in, and just based on the resume and based on what I think that Illinois and some other people think about him, of being able to come in to college and have the frame, have the skill set. So I expect him to be a starter. I expect him to be somebody that can run offense through, to play make, to be able to shoot the three too. I do think, again, if he was a freshman from the United States that was coming in, or an international guy, there's going to be a learning curve. There's going to be maybe some bumps in the road in terms of inconsistency. We just see that with young players in their first trying their hand at college for the first time. But I do think he'll be successful. People that I talk to think that 2 years in college and he's probably positioning himself ideally for an NBA try. So I think that's great. And of course, that opens up the 2-year window conversation that we've had a number of different times. And I think that's one reason, even if you are kind of, I wouldn't say skeptical, but maybe saying, oh, this team could have growing pains next year. And there is some youth at different spots, and we'll see how it all clicks. You got so many new guys playing together for the first time. It's exciting to think about what next year could look like. But even if a lot of them stick around and stay, you add Jeremiah Fears to that mix, that team could be really, really good 2 years from now too.
Let's get into that conversation, Derek, because this is a fun way to frame this conversation, but I feel like we're going to have to frame it in our own ways, because I want to ask you, how would you kind of grade the overall Illinois basketball offseason? But I'm thinking in my mind, I might give one grade for the 2024-25 season, but another grade just for the overall talent haul, because this is a young team, right? Like there's not a lot of, guys who have proven themselves at this level. I'm a huge fan of Ben Rickhouse. I think he could lead the team in scoring next year, but he's still got to step up from the Missouri Valley. I think it all translates. I think he'll do well. Illinois has shown that they can have a guy come from the Missouri Valley and succeed, like Marcus Damask. Trey White has proven himself at the Power 5 level. I think he can take another step. Kylan Boswell, very experienced for a 19-year-old. But other than that, there's a bunch of 18 and 19-year-olds in this group. So my expectation right now isn't for this team to win a Big Ten championship. I do think in 2 years, in next season, the year after this one, that this team can win a Big Ten championship if a lot of these guys stick around, which of course we never know if that's going to happen nowadays. But so my grade for the 2024-25 season might be B, because I think this team's going to make the tournament. But I think I am so intrigued by this roster, what it can do offensively and what it could do, not this season, but next season, if it all sticks together, because I think the talent they have accrued here is like an A minus for me of this offseason.
Yeah, I'm on the same page. Every angle there that you just diagrammed, it's very talented. It's a very talented team. Again, you talk about shooting, you talk about playmaking. The idea that Trey White was an all-league freshman in the Pac-12 and he's one of those guys that maybe he clicks as a junior and getting in a better, more winning situation at Illinois. And Kylan, 5-star, played with USA basketball type of guy. It's now going to be in his third year in college and yet only be a 19-year-old. So those guys I'm excited about as far as immediately. I think, with the high major experience, they both have 2 years under their belt coming in. You pair them with Rickhouse. Those guys should provide you with some instant impact, some ability to win right away. I'm not saying that, Kasparis, even though he's young, they can't help with that, or Kerry Boothby is able to develop this offseason, get a little more consistent with his jumper. Those are things that he could do as well. So, and Ivicic has played against grown men, like we talked about when he committed. He's played against guys like Kaminsky and players that have already been standouts in college or even dabbled in the NBA for a little bit. So I like that experience. I mean, he's going to be 21 years old when the season starts. But similar to you, if it was an AJ Storr or a David Jones or a Kadari Richmond, even though Illinois, I'm not saying they were close on that one, but they did try to make a push. Those are guys that would be potential, Big Ten Player of the Year contenders, if not a favorite. Like AJ Storr might have been the favorite to win Big Ten Player of the Year if you get him. I think that's where I would be, no doubt, as far as this upcoming season. So I'm kind of in that B range. If you want, depending on how you want to frame it, B, maybe even B plus. We'll see how it plays out. If you think kind of as a talent or even a 2-year window, and yes, there's no guarantee that guys will stick around, but I like the upside of the 2-year potential, and I think it could be very much an easy A if you get, say, Kylan back for 2 years, or for another year, you get him for 2 years, KJ back for another year, Vicic, then throw in Fears. You have Merez as a sophomore, then that team could be studly, like legit.
I agree. Easy A, by the way, one of my favorite little rom-com high school movies of the 2000s. Love that movie. No, I am so intrigued. This is fun for me. Like I think this roster and this whole process has been really fun for me because we're seeing what Brad Underwood wants, what he can do, and just going everywhere to get talent. I am so intrigued by this. Like if you're an Illinois fan going into next year expecting the Final Four, I don't think you're going to have a lot of fun with this. If you're the Illinois fan thinking, hey, this next 2-year window could be one of a fun team that we get to know and dive into, and they're going to compete in the Big Ten the first year. Then the next year they all come back potentially. I mean, they're not all going to come back. Spoiler alert, probably not. But like, then that could be the great team. I feel like if you frame that in your mind that way, but I am so fascinated to watch this maturation process, Derek, because there's risk here because these guys haven't played together. There's so many different pieces coming from so many different places, and there's going to be growing pains, especially against the schedule that you have with the non-conference Brad has, which I love. The Big Ten is going to be very difficult, but I kind of trust Brad to get them through that and to get better through that. I think of Brad starting to, like I thought of Tom Izzo, like they might struggle early, but they're going to figure it out towards the end of the season because they've seemed to do that. But then, like, what could this be at the end of the year? What could this be going into next year? Because the offensive pieces are so much fun. And we saw what that offense could be last year. There's not a Terrence Shannon in this group, but I feel like offensively this team is potentially deeper with more scoring options. And Derek, you said it before. I meant to bring it up. They actually have 2 point guards on this team. There's actual point guards on this team. So how this team will evolve and how Brad changes the offense. I don't think it's going to be just booty ball. There's going to be a lot of ball screens. It's going to be a lot of NBA actions with this team. And I'm excited to watch that process, even though it's not going to be perfect. Like there's going to be bad games probably for this team. But there's also going to be, I think, vast improvement as the season goes along.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think it will be refreshing, especially for the crowd that has talked about. And again, there's no guarantees what a year from now or the conversations we're having, whether it's someone that like Kylan, maybe he has a studly year. And if that's the problem you have, that's a great problem. If he makes the jump to the NBA or Again, obviously, there's the other side of the coin. If somebody you come in and maybe think they could stay multiple years, decides to transfer or go back overseas, those type of things have happened. But again, yeah, I think what I was getting at is that people who have complained about the current environment of college basketball doesn't allow you to see the maturation process. It's all immediate. It's all 1 year. It's all built for one season, and then you don't get to really latch on to a team, a group of guys to stick around for maybe a longer period of time. It would be a little bit old school to say, all right, this might be a 2-year window. Let's see some of the points in the season where, yeah, maybe they have a clunker or two, but it's one game. It's like, okay, that's where that team figured it out. And then you saw the growth of KJ. You saw the growth of, Kerry Booth emerging. Again, Mraz is a freshman and said, all right, this is almost, and it's not a perfect comp, but I think back to that team of Io and Kofi, and I know you don't have an Io or Kofi on this team, but 2019-20, like that team, as they had to, through that season, figure it out. They got blown out at Arizona. They lost, I think, did they lose in their ACC Big Ten Challenge game to Miami? And then Michigan State, they got drubbed early in the Big Ten schedule, but ultimately they were really momentum down the stretch of that season, and then getting those guys back for one more year, piece together what was a preseason top 10 team. And you could see a vision where that could happen with this team, especially with, again, who you're bringing in and Jeremiah Fears, what Mraz can be 2 years, after a year of seasoning. And I think he's going to be good next year, but just to maybe even be a real big time player as a sophomore, and KJ, if you get him for 2 years. So I think it'll be fun to watch. I mean, it's going to be a fun brand of basketball because a lot of really good offense, I think. Yes, when you have new pieces, sometimes the chemistry can be a work in progress. But yes, to see that growth will be fun. Not to say that an old team that like last year, as much as they were just pretty steady and consistent and were able to obviously work it all the way to the Elite Eight, and being able to lean on a star like Terrence Shannon was a good thing to have. It was pretty nice. It elevated your floor in a big way, and obviously gave you a really exciting season when you have an All-American type. And no, they don't have that on this roster as far as what we can say right now, but they have a lot of pieces, a lot of offensive talent, and Brad's coming off a year where they were top 5 in the country in offensive efficiency, and I think they'll be really excited what they can play with this roster as well.
Yeah, thanks to the 500 plus on the live YouTube channel. We appreciate you guys. Hit that like button, subscribe to us, hit the notifications bell. A little conversation about the expectations. Like I said, this is going to be an NCAA tournament team. I'm just saying, if your expectations are the same as last year's team, because that had Terrence Shannon. We didn't know Marcus Damask was going to be that, but they had Coleman Hawkins. Like, I don't want to overlook some of the contributions. Hawkins, Gary A. Like, we knew Gary A. would be a productive player on the team. Like, they have so much to replace and so much to go through as a team that those other guys had. I mean, there were so many 24-year-olds on that team. And Derek, we've seen when you have old guys, those teams are usually winning, and they're just more consistent, and they respond to adversity maybe a little bit different. So I think Kylan Boswell is an old 19. So I think he'll be fine with that. I think Ty Rodgers, Ben Humrickhouse can do that. I still have high expectations relatively for the team, like NCAA tournament team. Can they make a Sweet 16? I think they have the talent to do that. Like, I think Avicic has a pretty high floor for a newcomer, but like, I just think if you're expecting last year's team immediately, I don't think that's fair to these guys. And I'm just saying, I'm going to enjoy the journey of this team, because there is so many new pieces, but so many intriguing high ceiling pieces. Like, the talent on this individual roster, we could look back on it 5 years and be like, oh, there's a pro, maybe NBA player here, NBA player there, maybe draft pick. Like, I think Brad Underwood did a heck of a job of overhauling the talent. And if we're talking about the floors, yeah, the team's going to make an NCAA tournament despite losing 11 players or 10 players. That's a pretty good place to be.
Yeah, and having that talent gives you that assumed floor. I know that people pull the Bart Torvik, and again, like KJ, Thomas Law, there's nothing really to go on for them there to move that needle, the analytical side of it. But when people see the talent, I think they're going to know if there is a nice upside for Illinois if they do mature together and get that chemistry. And yeah, it is going to be different than last year, because like you said, I mean, Marcus Damask had scored 1,500 points in college before he even showed up at Illinois. I know it was the Valley, but still, like that's quite a reputation, a foundation to come in and played in a lot of games. And Shannon being what he was, Gary A played 4 years in high major basketball and was like 23, 24 years old. So it's just going to be different. Coleman Hawkins had been in the Big Ten for 4 years. So not having that will obviously be very different. I do think you do have to maybe also frame the idea. Now, there are teams that can still go out and load up old and get a bunch of COVID year guys and kind of go all in on 1 year. But there is more turnover now across the board than there ever was. So while you might sit there and say, wait, wow, I mean, Illinois has 10 new guys. Well, there's a lot of teams that have at least like 7 or 8 and those type of things. Like Duke, who you're going to play, has 2 guys coming back from last year's team as well. So, and we can have a conversation. I know, admittedly, we have a lot of time. Number one, it's still only May to dive in on like the Big Ten conversation, but I can poke holes in a lot of teams in the Big Ten. If you look around there, Indiana's really talented. I think that right now I would put them probably at the top of the board in the power rankings. Purdue, of course, good guard play, and Matt Painter's a great coach, but like Michigan State's thought to be maybe a top 25 team, a top 5 team. Jaden Akins, is he going to be their top option? We'll see what Jeremy Fears and Xavier Booker, I'm shocked, stayed there. You can get into conversations about different squads and kind of say, well, there's this and that. Illinois will have their own, in terms of hesitations from the outside saying, well, they're all new. They got young pieces, some guys who haven't played in college type of things. But you can also frame it as far as what they could be too. So I think the movement in the Big Ten is pretty immense in terms of the fluctuation that could happen. Could they be a top 5 team in the Big Ten? They could.
No, the way I look at Illinois, and I understand like why the Torvik numbers, like it's hard to compute some of like, especially the European guys, right? Like how do you analytically compute some of that stuff and how does it translate? Indiana, UCLA, probably the most talented. Purdue, I'm never going to count out Matt Painter and those 2 guards, and they continue to find great centers. So I'm not gonna overlook Purdue at all, because what they're doing is working for them. And Matt Painter, as good of a coach as there is in the country. I know Rutgers is adding a lot of talent. It's young. It's a really young team that did lose some pretty good players as well. So Ohio State's intriguing with all the talent they've added. I'm selling on Wisconsin. I'm buying on Nebraska because Hoiberg's done really well in the portal. But I think the combination of talent, of some proven pieces at the Division I level, and Brad Underwood, I just think the way the pieces fit makes as much sense for Illinois' offseason as any team. Like Indiana's recruited as much talent as anybody in the Big Ten. I still got questions about having 2 post players on the floor at the same time, even though they're incredibly talented. And Malik Renew, I think, would be, or not Malik Renew, but Mbako, I'd love him as like a stretch 4 more than the 3 he's going to play. So they're going to be good. I question, are they going to win the Big Ten? Like that's still got to be proven out. But Illinois got so many guys that need to prove themselves, but like the actual talent, the pieces, how they play, I just think it's Brad Underwood does this really well, finding the right pieces to fit what he wants rather than just get talent, Derek, and see if it fits all together. Brad's like, I'm going to get a talent because I need him to play this, because I need him to play alongside this guy. That's what I love about this offseason.
No, they did it last year too. They really made the fit work and identified not only the skill set, the talent, but how it would piece together with different guys on the roster. And I think that's why a guy like Kylan was really big, because it gave you a lot of flexibility of what you could add next to him at that 2 guard, another playmaker type of thing. Again, I think that allows you to do different things of making him effective off the ball, to shoot. Rickhouse, when you're going to kind of use him as a bigger playmaker, if you want to back him down, if you want to kind of ISO him, and being able to have shooting. I mean, being able to have shooting around Ty Rodgers, like you've talked about before, have shooting around Trey White if he's going to go mid-post game. And like, think about it, spacing out, Tomislav opening up that lane as a 5-man that can pick and pop, that can do some different things. Having a real traditional stretch 4 to be able to just have spacing to stretch that defense, strain that defense, have some talented playmakers. Kylan's very talented. Kasparis is very talented, and Brad has been able to show that he can mix and blend and be adaptable. And they found what they did offensively last year. Yes, you had to have a Terrence Shannon to put you in that elite tier. You had to have Marcus Damas have the season that he had to put you in that elite tier. But of course, you got to get that out of Marcus. I mean, he hadn't even shown that type of effectiveness or that just type of volume at even SIU. I think the situation around him was obviously better, which elevated him. But Brad deserves a lot of benefit of the doubt because every year, the down year that they had 2 years ago, which we talked about, was disappointing. Yes, relative to the expectations to the talent, but if a down year is a tournament and playing in the 8-9 game, that's what Brad's shown here over the last 5 years, which is pretty exciting.
It's a far cry from what we covered before that. Let's do a quick exercise, Derek, just because I think this gets people's minds wandering about what this team could be, and it's probably helpful for us as well. Let's pick out the rotation. All right. So starting guard, Kylan Boswell.
Yep.
Okay. Who's starting next to him in the backcourt?
I'd say Kasparis.
Okay. I agree with that. That's a pretty good playmaking duo that can play off each other, off the ball or on the ball. It'd be fascinating to watch that. But the offense is certainly, with those two, going to look different. Like, I still think they're going to go booty ball in some of these opportunities, but I think the way they get there is going to be, it's not going to just be Kylan going up the court and all of a sudden just picking out hey, screen for me, get the switch and go. Like, I think they're going to actually run a little bit more action that way.
I think there'll be a lot of ball screen, like you said. I definitely also believe, and Brad is always somebody that wants potent transition game. Those guys running in transition is definitely something they'll want to do. But yeah, putting KJ and Kylan in some ball screen stuff, there's no doubt they'll be doing that.
Who you got starting at the 3?
As of today, I'd put Trey White there.
Ooh, okay. Might have a disagreement there. I might go Tyler.
Yeah, I don't blame you for that. It's a toss up, and look, there's no right answer. No. We'll see.
This is a fun exercise because it gets us into those. This is a competition. What's the best rotation? Like, is it Ty starting? So you get some defensive effort, you get the offensive rebounds right away. I do think Trey White playing more minutes per game than Ty is a very likely possibility.
Yeah, I could be wrong. Maybe Ty with he's got a potential to have a real leadership dynamic.
That's why I'm going Ty.
Yeah,
I think he's going to be a captain. I think he's going to be a tone setter. And then because I think we agree 4 and 5, Ben Humrickhouse and Tomislav Ivisic.
Yes.
Okay.
And Merez will have a chance. Merez will have a chance to push Ivisic and see what that looks like. Yeah, and maybe because you are so, I wouldn't say, well, you're fairly geared towards the offensive end, I think, with the lineup in general. I do think, again, Kylan's going to be a good on-ball defender, but maybe Ty, especially defending maybe more wings now, wings and forwards.
Yes.
That would give you some of what you don't have otherwise. Like, those guys are a lot of guys are scorers, shooters. Ty can be the junkyard dog, rebounder, defender. I'm not going to argue with that. It'll be a very interesting competition as the summer and fall go along.
Like, I'd feel way better about Ty Rodgers guarding Mackenzie Mbako than Trey White right now, based on what I've seen from those two. All right. Trey White and Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn first off the bench?
Yeah.
In my scenario, in your scenario, would be Ty Rodgers and Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn?
Ty Rodgers, DGL, yeah. Merez, close there, obviously, I think.
The fact that, Kerry Booth is an unbelievable talent, and we're talking about him as potentially the 8th, 9th guy. That's a pretty good sign of your talent level.
No doubt. Yeah.
A talented player.
And I think that people have to remember, too, he was a young freshman last year, a guy that's certainly talented. The ability to shoot it, has shown straight line drive and elevate above the rim potential. They're pretty darn excited about who Kerry Booth can be. I think it's how soon the potential matches then the production type of thing. So he could prove that list wrong. He could be a guy that plays more. But I think it also is a statement to how important Humrickhouse is going to be. I think Humrickhouse is going to play big-time minutes and is maybe your ultimate leading scorer.
Yeah. No, that would be my bet. Would be Humrickhouse, Boswell.
Yep. Yeah.
And then maybe a bunch of guys with that 7 to 7 to 11 kind of range that we're looking at. But wrapping it up, Jake Davis, probably your 10th guy, and Jason Jackstis, most likely redshirting, and 2 open scholarships. I guess we should answer that question, Derek. Is Illinois going to add anybody else?
I think they'll try. They'll try to get one more potentially. It'd have to be the right guy, right fit type of thing. Will Riley is probably the one that they're going to look at still, potentially. A guy that's in the 25 class from Canada. A lot of, we talked about it, I think, on the last podcast. A lot of guys in the past, handful at least, of high-profile Canada types that are 18 years old, which he already is, have then, played the summer, then reclassed. I think they'll look at that with him if the fit works. And there's high competition there, Arizona, Alabama, Arkansas, Kentucky. But they're really, really high on him. And if you can get him this year, I think they would love to.
Just a reminder, Will Riley, number 22 prospect in the class of 2025. In the composite, he's number 16 in a composite 5-star, 6'8", 180. What is the skill set there? And what's it seems like Illinois' kind of gotten more into the mix with Orlando Antigua, correct?
Yes. Yeah, he was a lead recruiter for him at Kentucky. He had cut his list to 5. I listed the 4 schools and then the Australian League as well. So because of Orlando's relationship and connections, has been able to work it for Illinois. And he hasn't publicly expanded his list or doing anything like that. He's going to take visits in June. I know that he told Zach's blog that it was going to be Alabama and Kentucky in June. Illinois, to my knowledge, working that very hard to join one of those teams that he's going to visit as well. So 6'8" playmaking wing, a guy that has the ball in his hands a lot at this stage in the EYBL, and he's been one of the best players in the EYBL this spring. He went off for 42. I know everyone's pretty familiar with that. I think 42 points, 15 of 16 shooting in Indianapolis 2 weekends ago, and Brad and O were watching that one, and just a guy that can make shots from pretty much anywhere, can create his own off the dribble, get others involved, good passer, good feel. It would be interesting kind of what he would want if he were to reclass as far as a role, what Illinois could sell him. Because like we just did in the 8-man rotation, you can go like 8-9 deep with pretty talented players. We already know that Trey White and Ty Rodgers is going to be pretty well established as far as a competition at that 3 spot. Could Will Riley crack that? And he's obviously, again, a big-time talent if you're a composite 5-star, but kind of what that looks like, what the NIL ask would be, and what that would ultimately play out to be. So, but man, I love his game. When I watched him in Indy, he was one of, if not the favorite player that I saw that weekend.
Future NBA player.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that's what we're talking about here. And that kind of wraps up the conversation, Derek, is like the talent level Illinois is getting and is in on now is just completely different under Brad Underwood, especially as this program has emerged as a consistent Big Ten contender and breaking through to the Elite Eight, the NIL resources that they have and are always trying to improve. But I think it says something that, talent like Merez Johnson and Jeremiah Fears are coming. Like that 2 guys of 12 on the USA basketball team. No other college team has 2 commits on that team. There's only 3 other guys committed elsewhere, and Illinois has 2 of them. That's a great sign for the program. Like this is a good time for Illinois basketball when it comes to talent they are bringing in, and the coach deserves a lot of trust in putting these rosters together and getting the most out of them for the most part.
The bar is so high now, especially in comparison to where it was through many, many years. But you think back to it, it kind of is in the range of, if maybe not even kind of, just in the range of the early 2000s of the guys you've got. And I know that if you thought about D Brown, like bona fide, legit, top 10 player. But as far as, winning real battles for, you're battling like a Michigan State for Ty Rodgers. Merez, if you wanted to open up, would have had a ton of options. Jeremiah Fears, Michigan was in there. You had a lot of different options for him as well. And so to get guys that are really highly regarded like that, to be on Team USA, Io on Team USA, that says a lot about how they view those players. But yeah, to be able to have that runway again, to go from right before you transition from high school to college, to have Io having done that, and Ty did that, and now Merez is going to get a chance to do it. And And it tells you what people think of Jeremiah, because he's in that mix with, look at the other guards in there. You got Jasper Johnson. And of course, Illinois is now recruiting. He's a 5-star combo guard, really good scorer. Darius Acuff is from Michigan, thought to be the top point guard in the 2025 class. So Jeremiah being in that range is viewed as one of the best, like the best guards in the country by being on that team. So he's had a really good spring, and to be on that team with Merez, that's exciting. And obviously you hope to see those two together 2 years from now in Champaign.
Let's get to a few questions before we get out of here from our live YouTube. Micah, do you guys think that the team can realistically compete for a championship this year, or would it have to be in the back leg of a 2-year window? Thanks for all you do. Thanks for tuning in, Micah. Yeah, we've talked about this a little bit, but I think in this Big Ten, sure, because you don't have Zach Edey in this conference. So I think there's probably like half the teams in the Big Ten coming into this year thinking, hey, we can be one of those teams in the top 5 of this 18-team league, because there's not, the top dominant teams. Like there's not a Houston in here, or a Kansas, some of those teams, Tennessee. Like I don't see that caliber of team yet in the Big Ten. We got to see it all play out, but there's so much change here that it's hard to really project if there's an elite team in the Big Ten. I feel like it's deep again. I feel like there's a lot of NCAA tournament teams. It's just, is there that dominant team that's no doubt going to be a number 1 seed like Purdue last year? I'm not sure.
Right. No, I fully agree with that. Alabama's another team out there that's going to be viewed as a lead, especially if they get Mark Sears back. And anyone that has forgotten, Wednesday is going to be the date for the NBA draft as far as the deadline. You got to say you're staying in or you're coming back to college. So that's going to be interesting to kind of have these final dominoes fall as the landscape goes. But you going to add something in there?
Yeah. Final prediction. What's Coleman do?
I haven't been keeping up with the intel or digging too hard on that. I just have thought, because
I don't blame you, because he's
back to school.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Sorry to interrupt, but he's probably not coming back to Illinois. So it's right. Yeah, right. So it wouldn't shock me if he just goes, I'm done with school. But it would make a lot of money sense. Like it's, Coleman, I would get even more than Kofi. Like Kofi had a lot of money to gain, but he was just a sophomore. Probably wasn't going to get drafted. But after 4 years of college, man, you're 22. You just dealt with an injury. Maybe you just want to go. Maybe you just want to go test yourself and live in the real world. He's still going to make money no matter what he does. So, and I just feel like Coleman's game translates to the NBA. But boy, he can make a lot of money if he came back to college and transferred.
It'd be nice as some coaches were gathering and talking about Coleman Hawkins, coaches from different schools I was around and within earshot, if not involved in the conversation. But one said that, Coleman, no knock on him or anything. You just don't know at this point. This might be his best and only chance to make $1.5 million a year in his pro career. Not to say that if he does with his upside, ultimately get a guaranteed on an NBA roster type of contract, that could happen for him. But that would be guaranteed money if he goes back to school and just one more year, cash that paycheck. Yes, your stock's probably not going to go up at all because you're viewed as probably 22 years old by the time he'd get drafted then, or just be in that draft pool again. I think from a financial standpoint, it makes a lot of sense to come back and just get that paycheck and maybe, be on a team that's going to make another run deep into the postseason. So, but if he's done, I get it. Kofi was done too. Kofi had won back-to-back. He was a back-to-back All-American. He was probably I've shown everything I can show, whether I fit in the NBA now or not. I am who I am. But even he said, I think on his Instagram, someone said, he said, I regret not going back to Illinois for another year because he left a lot of money on the table. We'll see ultimately what Coleman does, though, so that will be interesting. Yeah,
I would side with Coleman doing the most rational thing. Because as crazy as he can be on social media, I'm enjoying the trolling he's doing of everybody right now.
He's coming back to Illinois, right? He all that.
Love it. He's a really smart kid. So I do think he will weigh all his options. And ultimately, I would be pulled back for 7 figures to play college basketball for another year. And as you said, potentially he said he's not coming to the Big Ten. He's not going to do the Luke Goody, which I can't blame Luke Goody for going home and playing when they want you and pay you. But I wouldn't mind seeing Coleman Hawkins play for a national power. Like I'd root for the kid. I don't know if every Illinois fan would feel that way.
Like
And
you're in Chapel Hill making like 1.5. Like that sounds pretty
North
good.
Carolina might be the one spot. UConn, they might feel a little differently. I don't know if UConn even needs him at this point. Anthony Williams, what's KJ's rating star-wise? I've seen some people just throw out 5-star on Twitter. I don't personally know where that comes from. I've asked for a rating. I don't know if he's going to be rated in the class of 2024 because I know we had trouble with that. With those UCLA guys signed late, and it was hard to put him in a ranking. I think he's a 4-star. I think Avicic is a 4-star at the very least, Derek. But these are top 75 type talents, in my opinion, if you're going to try and rank them in the class of 2024. And then you want to rank them a little higher because, especially Avicic, because I just think he's going to, as a 21-year-old, he's going to make no doubt impact.
Yeah, with Avicic is almost like getting a transfer. Because he is older and has played against some grown men and those type of things. With Kasparis, again, like, and we haven't seen him up close, and I know it's tougher on our evaluators. Yes, in today's age, it's easy to access a lot of game film, and that stuff is able to be had. But yeah, I mean, at least a 4-star, at least top 75, maybe top 50 type potentially. I mean, based on what he's shown here, especially recently. You look at the stats that he's put up. Playing in that Spain league. So, like you said, we're probably not going to have it on our site in terms of a ranking. I think, Made Hoops is one service out there that has ranked him pretty high. I think they have him inside the top 20, and that includes their entire rankings for the 2024 group. But I'm not sure where he'll stand, but he's a highly touted. He was coming from high school. He'd be, again, highly touted and thought to be a pretty high-profile playmaker in the backcourt.
How I view them, Derek, is I view Kasparis like a top 50 get in a high school kid. And then I think of Avicic as like a top 100 get as a transfer kid. That's how I personally feel.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense for sure.
Last one, Dylan, will Kasparis and Boswell share point guard duties? Yeah. Like they actually have a couple of dudes that can do it, and Dre Gibbs Allhorn can handle it a little bit if he needs to. I think Ty can handle bring the ball up a little bit if he needs to. So it's a lot different. I think we've pointed that out a couple of times here on this podcast. It's just the skill set you have at that position. You're just not riding Marcus Damas to carry that heavy burden of both bringing the ball up the court, dealing with pressure, as well as initiating offense. And you can just initiate offense in better ways with, I think, more explosive guards, more natural point guards like this in ball screens.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, it says a lot, obviously, that it wasn't a bigger issue having the ball in Marcus's hands as much as it was. A guy that was playing like the 4 at SIU a bunch. Yes, he was skilled there, versatile, could extend it out to the perimeter and initiate a lot of their offense because, he was the number one option. But yeah, to be able to get pressured like he did at times, but there were some limitations to that. He could get his pocket picked a few times and whatnot. But yeah, I think just with those point guards, you can allow it to be a little bit more fluid as far as the flow of your offense and ball screen actions. But yes, they definitely view both guys as quote unquote point guards, guys that they're going to run stuff through, guys that they are comfortable with both pushing in transition. And I think that they definitely, again, to reemphasize, they view Kasparis as like a 6'5" point guard that's going to play alongside another point guard in Kylan. And again, I think Kylan's experience playing with other ball handlers and playmakers is an asset to have, and both are off-ball shooters that are really, really good.
I feel like, Derek, I know there's other things going on. The Will Riley, we got high school recruiting. Take a breath. The roster is set for the most part. Like, here we are 2.5 months later, and it finally feels like it's coming to a close here. The off season is as long as the season almost, it feels like.
Unbelievable. Yeah, it's been 2 months and some change since Illinois was done playing, but the picture is pretty clear now for the most part. And I told my wife last night, like, hey, Illinois is going to commit early this week. And she's like, oh, great. That's more things for you to do, more busy. I was like, hey, we're that much closer to be done. And actually, this might be the last piece for a while, if period. Like, they might go in with 2 spots. So, yeah, might take a breath, might start looking at vacation spots at some point. Who knows? But, yeah, Will Riley visited tour, I think, in June. think Illinois will be involved with that. But outside of that, we're pretty solidified on what next year's roster is going to look like.
There we go. Then we can dive into the actual basketball stuff, which I enjoy. Well, Derek Piper, appreciate you as always, man. Thanks for the insight. Look forward to more of your stuff on the website, man.
Absolutely, man. Always fun.
Thanks to everybody, the 500 plus watching on the live YouTube channel. Hit that like button before you get out of here. Follow us. Hit the notifications bell. Thank you to everybody for listening on the podcast. Give us a follow, rating, review wherever you get the podcast. And check us out on IlliniInquirer.com. We're keeping up with Illinois golf at the NCAA Championships, Illinois baseball in the NCAA tournament, and plenty with Illinois football. As I got one big target still left on the board, and their transfer portal pursuits as they get ready for their offseason to start as well. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Illini Inquirer podcast. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Illini Inquirer podcast.